All right, everybody, welcome to the live post-game show with Kenny and Rennie. Want to thank our brothers at Illegal Curve who always send traffic in our direction. Those guys are the best, aren't they? Hope you enjoyed their show. Kenny, I think we got a little bit of a kind of like David Letterman late night thing going on there. You got the Johnny Carson early slot come to us after that. But yeah, we really appreciate those guys and what they do and admire the job they do. So if you're coming from that show, we appreciate you bouncing over. We love taking your comments. Your questions. Let's just start off though, Ken. What did you take away from tonight's game?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Sean. What were we talking about all week about how the Jets needed to be better defensively? Well, they held the Oilers to three high danger chances, according to the folks at Natural Stat Trick. Had seven of their own, but lost a 2-1 game on a night where generation was challenging at times. There's no doubt about that, but for all of the things that we talked about in terms of a need to be better in their own end, the Jets once again clamped down. I mean, obviously they were much better than they were in the third period against Montreal the night previous, and were it not for a couple of explosive bursts by Connor McDavid, I mean, the Jets played well. I mean, I guess you could counter by saying the Jets' fourth line was probably their best line at times. They scored the only goal of the contest. So some folks would say they didn't get enough from their top end guys, but I mean, it's funny that we talk about the trade off all the time, Sean. Right? So, do you want to have a team that's offensive and can run and gun with teams like Toronto, or do you want to have a team that is defensively sound and maybe sacrifices a bit on the offensive side? So, I mean, I think the Jets would be encouraged, but as you mentioned, I mean, there wasn't a lot of gas in the tank, it didn't look like. So for me, I think that fourth line generated some energy. I mean, they probably created some of the best scoring chances. And again, even on a night where the Jets top line definitely had trouble generating, there's Mark Scheifele. And I mean, some people are calling that a whiff. Sean, that's not a whiff. The puck hit the skate of Josh Archibald and jumped over his stick. That is not a whiff. A whiff is when it's right in your wheelhouse and you miss the puck. This is not a miss. If he bats it out of the air, it's an exceptional play. If there are folks blaming Mark Scheifele for not bearing down there, you got to give the replay a second look. I mean, I'm sorry. There's just no other way to describe that for me.
I mean, you're talking about their defensive game. This point here by Arsenal card entirely right. And hey, let's give the credit where it's due. You called this before the game. You thought Brossoit was going to play well. I thought he was phenomenal. I do think that there was some pretty good scoring chances there. A couple slot shots that he just really stood tall on. And down the stretch, I thought there was a couple chances that the Edmonton Oilers could have pulled away in that game and didn't because Laurent Brossoit held them in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Jesse Puljujärvi, man, he just looks like an entirely different player.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
man, that left pad save that Brossoit makes against him in the third period is absolutely exceptional. There were plays where Puljujärvi was playing like a man possessed. I mean, he just barreled somebody aside in front of the Jets' net, had a great chance there. He rifled one over the net when he looked to be going bar down. And I think that this is just a player who has totally reinvented himself and found a home. I mean, it's really impressive. He is growing into a power forward and into the guy that at that draft there was some buzz late. I mean, we all expected Patrick Laine to be the Jets pick, but I remember being out in Buffalo and the text message came in and Pierre LeBrun looks over and says, the Bob father just says the Jets are considering Puljujärvi. And this is about, it's probably 10 at night. Deadlines have already kind of passed and you're kind of looking around going, man, that's not what I heard. But I mean, this is the kind of player that I'm just saying he was considered to be right up there among the top three picks. So, I mean, it took him a while. Everyone's development path is different. It did not go well. And this is what I would go back to. This is another great cautionary tale, Sean, for all the people who want to rush the prospects in. Jesse Puljujärvi was rushed into the NHL. He had to go to Bakersfield. It did not go well for him there. He went back to Finland and then found his scoring touch and now has definitely found a way to fit in very well. So kudos to him. As far as the Jets go, I mean, man, it's interesting. I mean, I just don't know. There's not a whole lot of area to criticize. I mean, Connor, this is funny. Not funny, that's not the right word, but so the Leafs got hellebucked last week in that one game, right, in the Tuesday night game. The Jets just got, I think, a Connard of their own. McDavid just came up with 2 brilliant plays. Again, I asked Paul Maurice this, and a lot of people were saying, well, a lot of people were pointing the finger at Josh Morrissey on the first goal. Well, the puck, when it is hard rim around the boards, and it's it wasn't at stick level. I mean, I just don't know what you want him to do there. He was in position to make the play. The puck got by him. McDavid knocked it, landed right on McDavid's stick, and before you know it, McDavid is past everybody. There's a clear lane to the net, and the puck is hitting the back of the mesh. I mean, this is the guy with the explosive speed, and it's the hands and the speed combination, Sean. That is what is the difference in this hockey game.
Yeah, so if I take a look at, and first I want to acknowledge this, our guy Razor says that I've got a real bad echo coming from my microphone. It's a running theme with us that we've got our issues with our microphones. We're trying to figure this out, people. We're just not technical people. So sorry, please stick with us. We're going to do our best here tonight. Hopefully it's not too offensive. I'm interested in your thoughts, though, on the top end talent that we get from a guy like Connor McDavid against this team. Clearly, the Jets, in my mind, are the more deep of these two teams. But we've seen time and time again, we've talked about it in the past, that these games between the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets are always really close games. And is Connor McDavid the great equalizer, like the Jets' depth is the great equalizer? Because maybe you're deeper, but is the top end that much better if you're talking Connor McDavid?
Yeah, hey, and I think too, and I think Paul Maurice alluded to it. If this game is played, let's see what happens on Saturday. There's no doubt that Connor McDavid is playing at an elite level. It's impressive to watch. 20 goals now. I mean, there's been lots of debate who deserves the Hart Trophy. Is it Austin Matthews? Is it Connor McDavid?
There lots of debate? In my mind, there's no, like, I know what you're saying, because
that's what people are saying. I mean,
I know, but to me, it's ridiculous. To me, it's a manufactured controversy. He's far and away this year the best player in the game, is he not? Or do we really think that Austin Matthews? I saw an article the other day, and it's like Austin Matthews has elbowed his way into the conversation of who's the best player in the game. No, he's not. This is ridiculous. These are two players who came into the league 1 year after the other, and one has been clearly the best player in the league for a long time. The other one is a great player, but this rush to try and put them in the same category seems desperate to me. I don't see it.
I think, Sean, I understand where you're going to, but what's happening for me is that it's the elevation in the defensive effort from Austin Matthews. And that is where we're at here. I don't think it's just the Toronto media. It might be the Toronto media, Travis, because they're watching the game closely, and they're the people that have seen the effort in terms of the back check. So
look at Hammy here. Look at Hammy coming in, trying to blow everything up. I love this stuff.
We should invite him in, is what you should really do right there.
You know what? I'll send him an invite if he wants to.
I think you should.
I'll try and get it to him. You fly the plane for a little bit, and I'll see if I can't get this going.
Yeah, that's good. Let's leave him. You can leave him on the sidelines. The guy's filed. He's had a long.
All right. Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
But I do like it. So that to me is where the separation is. I think that McDavid is obviously, I mean, again, you can't argue. I mean, they're neck and neck for goals, but the assist totals are quite a bit higher for McDavid. Matthews is playing very well defensively. I think that's the other part of it. However, I mean, I think right now it was pretty clear tonight. He was able to elevate. So back to the original question. I want to see what Saturday's game looks like. Last night, the Jets' second line was a dominant force. Tonight, the top two lines didn't get a lot going, but it just seemed pretty obvious that they didn't really have the same kind of jump and the same kind of spring in their step as they did last night against the Montreal Canadiens. So,
I keep blowing up your thoughts tonight, but it's too much fun. Totally it's too much fun not to.
We got to give the people what they want. So that is what the people want. Sorry, Hammer. Right now, what's happened is that my manager has pulled on your leg while you're on the top rope, and you just bounced off the ropes and fell onto the ground. And now I've got you set
and
up
the
for
ref
the
is just waking up. The ref is just waking up to see,
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
happening here? There
Yeah.
goes Kenny off the top rope.
Yeah, here comes the Macho Madness elbow coming your way right now, Hammer time. So, again, I mean, yeah, it's just one of those strange games. I think not a lot of neither team had a lot of energy, and the MVP right now of the league elevated on 2 shifts. And so again, we talked about the first goal. What happened on the second goal? I'm not sure if everybody noticed, but what happened on the sequence? Right before Derek Forbert went for the ill-advised pinch, he had raised his hand. He wanted to change, but because of the long change, there was a little bit of mayhem in the neutral zone. He couldn't get off quickly enough, and then he was too late to pinch, but he went anyway. So this is what we talked about in the pregame, Sean. Sometimes the body is willing, but the mind is not quite as sharp, and it did not allow you to get there in time, even though you saw the play developing. But that combination platter was too much. And then lo and behold, again, it's another 2-on-1. And McDavid absolutely flies down the wing and beats him with the shot. I have to take a little bit of ownership here, Sean. We worked so hard all day at getting the sound right.
Yeah.
My sound was on the computer speakers. So that was what was causing the echo with the microphone in there. So
you're trying to sabotage me.
No, I really not. I worked so hard at getting this mic stand set up properly in my kitchen table here that apparently I was unable to get the right button pushed. But I think we've solved all of our sound issues, and everybody is completely thrilled now. So
since we're talking wrestling analogies, I think this is like back in the days where what is it? The Rockers. I'm Marty Jannetty, and you're Shawn Michaels. Pretending that we're buddies, and then you give me the sweet chin music with the microphone. You've turned the tables. You're the guy who's supposed to have the mic problems, and then we come in here tonight, and I'm the guy with the mic problems because I get sabotaged by my partner. So
that's true.
There you go.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the Heartbreak Kid, but I would have preferred if I was coming at you, it would be with the Honky Tonk Man guitar smash is what I would have come with.
There we go.
And,
there we go.
Mr. Fuji might have used the cane as well to take your legs out on the play also. So
I want to close out. I want to get to something that you were talking about. I want to close out the point that we were making because my boy Colin McDougall, who's just one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet in your life, he says, I think they just continue to look for another player to compare him to, but there's no comparison. And I honestly, I hate being the guy who's like the media this, the media that. I hate that. When people say that to me, it drives me nuts because the media is not just one big voice. It's a bunch of different people saying different things. And I will say this. There is a little bit of tunnel vision that comes in when you're covering your own team. I mean, we will have, in Winnipeg, we will have had a better idea of just how good Blake Wheeler was over the last however many years than any other team in the league. He was a hidden secret, a bit of a hidden gem. We knew it because we're here watching him. But I mean, it works both ways. There's probably an element of us thinking that maybe another player is far better than they were. And I think that's been the case a lot of times. I think there's a lot of players that Jets fans get really excited about that I'm like, I don't necessarily see it that way. When they're your own people, when you cover them all the time, and let's be honest, they're athletes who do amazing things on a nightly basis, you kind of get tunnel vision and you kind of get impressed by what they're doing. You don't necessarily see what happens night to night. And I'll make this last point before we move on. I thought last year, just to hammer this point home, Jonathan Toews, who a lot of people were saying was past his prime, last season, every single game that they played against the Winnipeg Jets, I thought in every game last year, Jonathan Toews was the best player on the night every single night. Always didn't show up on the score sheet, but it's one of those things. If you're in Chicago watching Jonathan Toews play on a nightly basis, you're realizing he's a lot better than the rest of the league thinks he is. Okay.
Yeah, and the other one too, Sean. I mean, I was there in the bubble before you got there, and Toews was the best player and the best center in a series that included Connor McDavid and the league MVP Leon Draisaitl.
Exactly.
Yes, I mean, there were other factors, but Toews basically dragged that group on his back and said, come with me, we've got this. And that's what caused the upset in that series. And again, as we're talking about Toews, I mean, obviously again, there's not a lot of information, but you saw Jonathan pop up on that video for Patrick Kane's celebration of the 1,000 games. That's probably a good sign. I mean, you don't want to
looking great
into it, but you're certainly wishing him all the best in terms of his health and recovery. That's for sure.
He looked great. He looked happy. Let's handle Joanne Yaw's question here. And Joanne, we see you. We recognize you that you're back, and we've been seeing a lot of you. We appreciate it. Tomorrow we got big Louis DeBrusque, who would have called the game for the Oilers broadcast tonight. Did you happen to see online Gino's big berry bit on Tyson Barrie, and then he brought out a whole bunch of different berries? You got to see it. It's great. It's phenomenal.
I did not see it, but we definitely, again, we talked about Tyson Barrie before the game. But there he goes again, 2 more assists in both goals. And after that slow start, 2 points in 8 games, he's just been an absolute force.
Well, let's get back to some of the comments that we were saying.
Hang on, finish the other guy. So DeBrusque, one other special guest.
And we have Aaron Portsline coming in, and Portsy's just absolutely phenomenal. Does phenomenal coverage for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and we kind of want to get an idea of what's going on in Columbus right now with Jack Roslovic and with Patrick Laine, and talk a little bit about PLD and see the timeline from what we're getting from him. Portsy is a great guy to talk about. We chatted with him earlier on this year on a version of these things that we were doing, Ken, that the technology blew up in our face. and we couldn't get it. We finished an hour-long show with these great guests, and Kenny and I finished up, and we were like, that was awesome. All right, let's go do something with it. And I forgot to press the record button. So anyways, we're going to give Portsy another shot to show everyone just how impressive he is.
He's going to be even better. He's going to be even better. That's for sure.
I want to get back to you talked about Forbert's ill-advised pinch, and I know you gave the circumstances around that, talked a little bit about that, but I kind of go back to this idea of the aggression that it seems like Paul Maurice is trying to ramp up with his defense in pinching and shutting down plays before they start, but that cost them, in my mind, at that moment in the game, and it cost them a couple times in that Canadiens game. Are you seeing the same thing I am, or are you more forgiving of what's happening?
Well, I mean, yesterday it led to 3 goals and allowed 1. Well, tonight, it stopped a lot of plays, but it certainly led to the 1 goal there. That's for sure. So, I mean, again, this goes back to the whole debate about structure and how the Jets should be playing, and a lot of those people that are wanting to turn back the clock to 2018, Sean, that's what the Jets did in 2018. They were very aggressive in the neutral zone, pinching at the offensive blue line. Because they're not a defensive juggernaut, the opinion is if you can force by being aggressive, that's what will allow you to break up plays before you get into those sustained shifts in the defensive zone. So there is always going to be that give and take. And I mean, man, the risk reward profile will always have to be monitored. But no, for me, it was more a matter of the circumstances and wanting to change that led to that play. But again, you can't dispute the fact that it definitely cost them. And I actually think Neil Pionk played it pretty well. He laid out and took away the pass completely, and I would say, basically a perfect shot. I mean, the description that Laurent Brossoit gave was quite apt. I mean, because of his ability, like, it's not just the incredible thing about McDavid. There's been lots of people that have been fast, a lot of people that have great hands. That hands-feet combination is what separates Connor McDavid from the pack. And it was on display right there.
Josh Morrissey gave me the best explanation of why Connor McDavid is so good that I've ever heard. It was phenomenal. He told me he's got the fastest feet in the game, and his hands keep up with his feet, and his head keeps up with his hands. And he said one of those elements makes a great player. If you have one of those things, you're going to be a great player. He's got all 3, but the fact that those 3 pieces can work in synergy the way it does, he says, that's what makes Connor McDavid unique among players that he's ever played against. That's really, I thought that was interesting. You know what? And I liked your point about the 2018 Jets, because I'd asked Paul Maurice some questions earlier on in the season about trying to get back to that. And I asked him if that was the intent, or if he just simply didn't have the defense core to do that, the size or maybe the good sticks or whatever it was. But I mean, back in the days when you had Tyler Myers and Dustin Byfuglien and Jacob Trouba and those guys doing that and sealing off the blue line, they were a ferocious team, and it was really hard for them to get out of the zone, and that pinching worked out a lot. Now, I do remember back in those days, there was a lot of breakaways, and that's the risks that you take. I just wonder if this team that they're trying to build this element of their game back into, do they have the blue line to do it, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I was exchanging some messages today about that. There are apt comparisons from 2018 to now, but in terms of personnel on the back end, the reason why the Jets were able to be effective in that style was because their players fit that style. They had a lot of players with an offensive tilt to their game. I mean, you have Dustin Byfuglien, you have Tyler Myers, you have Jacob Trouba, all of whom love to activate. I mean, and that's a big difference from what we've seen now, whereas the Jets defense is not nearly as active now, so they're not going to be producing as much offensively. That doesn't mean you can't be aggressive in the neutral zone and at the far blue line, but I don't think they can play the same way because they don't have the same personnel, but they can incorporate parts of that style to help create things. So we got to be careful on those long comments.
I know we get our faces erased. I was trying to give it just enough time so that the audience could read it. Believe me, I'm paying attention to it, but I kind of did one of these when you make the comment. And now I'm trying to hide below the graphics that we have here. There's a comment that I wanted to get to here, kind of bouncing around all over the place here tonight. Kenny, until I find this, is there something that you want to a point that you want to make? Or just give me 2 seconds here. I'm falling all over the place here tonight.
Let's go back to the comparison.
Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. It's okay. Butters here, and I like this. What's the Paul Maurice's reasoning behind going power versus power with 55 up against McDavid? Not just tonight, but he seems to chase that matchup always. I've wondered this exact same thing. He hasn't really strayed from looking for that matchup. Usually, he likes to put Lowry up against Draisaitl. Why has he not? I think I've seen it a couple times, but why has he not given Lowry a healthy dose of McDavid to see how that turns out?
I mean, I think he did use that situation certain times in Winnipeg when he had the choice. But I mean, obviously Dave Tippett has the choice, being the home team tonight. I think the other part, Sean, that we talked about, it was when Stastny was at center. He was the line that went out and had success against Draisaitl, which allowed Lowry to go spend more time against McDavid. So the last couple nights, that Jets' third line's ice time has been down slightly. So I don't know if that's part of it or not. But and again, I'm also very curious too. I mean, obviously we know Andrew Kopp's a guy that takes some draws and a lot of draws at times. But I wonder yesterday, Adam Lowry, you and I noticed that funny collision where he seemed to be grabbing his hand or his wrist. I wonder if that was part of the reason why Kopp was taking a few more of the draws, and maybe that was part of the reason their ice time might have been down slightly. In terms of chasing the matchup, I mean, yes, I mean, they've gone best on best is not necessarily a situation that the Jets have strayed away from, but just with the composition of the lines, I think that's just the way it goes right now. So it's funny. Before it was fine, and now I'm quiet again. It seems like. I mean,
I don't know. It's becoming my favorite part of the show. Is like these two.
Hang on, we figured this out before. Hang on, you said you could crank my volume up on your side. Get back in there and crank it up. Crank it up. Let's go.
I don't know. I kind of don't. Here, is this working? I don't know if I want to mess with it. There, right. Does that work anyway? I don't know if that's working, but yeah, it's clearly becoming the favorite part of my show. Two old guys stumbling their way through technology in real time while a bunch of people make fun of them for it. It's like that. It's going to become our brand more so than talking hockey. I swear. Let's dig into the fourth line, and there's a couple other comments here I want to get to afterwards.
Let's go to this before that.
Okay,
choice.
Sure.
I'm going Hyman with this one. I understand that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is having a great year. I loved what I saw from Zach Hyman in terms of his energy and ability to jump up and down the lineup. Yes, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has done a nice job shifting to wing and riding shotgun with Connor McDavid with regularity. But I think when it matters most, I think I'd take Zach Hyman on my team when it comes to playoff time. I think he's the kind of guy that can can get you a little extra when the chips are down. But again, I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has developed his game nicely in the last little while. But I'm going to take the more unheralded player in Zach Hyman here.
Okay, and
sorry,
so
Vern.
I'm glad he brought this up. I was gonna ask you this question because I got curious about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I went out and I was looking at his numbers, and I don't think he's. And I know some of the numbers the last couple of years are lower because the games haven't been as much. But I mean, is it a failure on the part of a first overall drafted player who plays with Connor McDavid that he's not a point per game player?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a failure. I mean, it's not a grand slam or a home run. It's more like a ground rule double. And I think that when you're having a first overall pick, you need home runs. You're not looking for doubles. But again, if you're comparing Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to Rasmus Dahlin, who is also a first overall pick, I think right now you're feeling pretty happy about having Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And that's not to say Dahlin won't get it figured out, but that's the other problem. You want those first overall picks to not only do well, but you want them to smash right out of the gate. And that sometimes just doesn't happen. So you got to be patient with these players. I don't think that he lived up to the hype per se, but he still has found a way to be a very effective player. That's very kind of you to say.
I'd take Hyman too, but I mean, Jeff makes the point here at $2.25 million this year. Of course, you take him at
versus
that.
And I mean, what's the next contract going to look like?
That's the question. And what do you think it's going to look like? Because I mean, what he gets into the territory of one of those guys that we're looking back at and thinking like, is there a team in the league that is not made better by having Zach Hyman on that team?
Right, and here's the other part of that too. In terms of contract, the Oilers need to upgrade in net, and with the emergence of a guy like Puljujarvi, do you need Ryan Nugent-Hopkins? I mean, I think the one thing I would say about Nugent-Hopkins, I think you see him on the penalty kill once in a while, so there definitely has been improvement in his game, but he's going to want probably $6 million or higher. I think he's making $6 million right now, so. But again, too, the folks in Toronto think that Hyman's going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of around 5. So, I mean, neither one of these guys are going to be bargains anymore. But I think they're both effective players. But I just think that Hyman gives you a little bit of extra energy. You can maybe get a little bit more of those intangibles from him. But again, Nugent-Hopkins, maybe this is the year that he has the breakout in the playoffs. And there you go. So we talked about Tyson Barrie earlier. Mark Spector, our colleague, had a great column on Tyson Barrie about his effectiveness after that slow start. And guess what? He bet on himself with a $3.5 million contract, and he's going to want $5 or $6 million too. So who's the guy you can't live without? I mean, on a team that's been searching for defense for years, I think it's easier to replace Ryan Nugent-Hopkins than it is to replace a Tyson Barrie. And again, that there are warts at times when it comes to his defensive game, but because Darnell Nurse has elevated his defensive game in that top pairing minute role, I think that the Oilers need to re-sign Tyson Barrie and keep him in the fold because he clicks so well on that power play that is so dangerous for the Oilers.
I just worry about that so much, and it makes me think of Trouba and the great year that he had before he ends up with the New York Rangers because he gets on that Winnipeg Jets power play. Dustin Byfuglien's injured for so much of the year, and then he looks absolutely phenomenal. But I mean, what's the thing that both those two players have in common? I mean, Tyson Barrie had 2 points tonight, and guess who else had 2 points? Connor McDavid, right? So yeah, 2 goals, 2 points. When you're playing and getting it's what we were talking about. About a week ago with Neil Pionk. Neil Pionk is suddenly becoming this player who produces as well as he does. And you ask Paul Maurice about why it is. And it's like, well, because all of a sudden he's passing the puck to Nick Ehlers and to Mark Scheifele and to Kyle Connor. And those guys go and do amazing stuff at the puck. And you start to think, man, I'm a really good puck distributor, right? Because you get confidence by the results of what's happening on the ice, even if the result is just simply coming from sending the puck to a really, really good player. You wonder about that. You wonder about what Tyson Barrie looked like at the end of his career with Colorado and about what he looked like when he was with Toronto. I'm saying to you, he looks absolutely phenomenal right now. But does Ken Holland have to have a conversation with Tyson Barrie and his agent and say, we love you here, we think you're a good fit, but we think lots of people are going to be a good fit with when you're playing alongside Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and maybe take a couple million off your ask so that you can stay here and put up really good numbers in a really good spot that's going to make you look good. Because if you want to get paid $7 or $8 million based on what you look like with Connor McDavid, there's a good chance you're going to be out there in the world, and people are going to find out what you look like without him.
Well, that's fair, Sean, but what I would counter with, I mean, Jacob Trouba cashed in after his career-high 50-point season. Tyson Barrie has seasons of 59, 57, 49, and 53 during his career.
He's no chump.
And he also can't hold a candle to Trouba's defensive game, but he produces at an elite level offensively, which allows you to live with some of the defensive warts. And the other part, when you have skilled forwards that like to play a go-go type of game, you need an efficient puck mover like Tyson Barrie to get the puck in those players' hands, and that's the other part of it. What we've talked about with the Jets, the exits have not been as clean. I would also counter here, the Oilers' power play was the best in 40 years last year when they had Oscar Klefbom at the top. So, yes, Barrie has done a great job. It's not to say they haven't had someone before, but I do think that it's a little different dynamic. You have, just like the Jets, you have that one-timer ability with Barrie that you didn't have with Klefbom, the left-handed shot. So I think, again, you have to be careful how much you're going to pay, but I think he's going to be in that. If you found a multi-year deal at around $5 million, maybe $5.5 million in a flat cap world, I think both sides could live with it, because you have to remember Tyson Barrie is just 1 year removed from a frustrating year in Toronto, where there was a lot of pressure on him all the time. I love the fact that he stayed and went back in a Canadian market where there was pressure to perform, but there was also opportunity. This is one thing we always talk about, what players are looking for in free agency, Sean. Here's a great example. Tyson Barrie sees where he can fit with the group and then absolutely seizes the opportunity. And you got to give guys credit when they do that. Sometimes they got to take a little less money, but then they're betting on themselves and they're going to cash in later on.
I mean, I like Tyson Barrie a lot. I liked him when he was with Colorado. I mean, remember there was a while that there was rumors that he'd be ending up here at some point. People were talking about it. I just think the Edmonton Oilers are coming off that situation where they had so much dead money and so many bad contracts, and they're just finally at the point where they're starting to get out of it. I just don't think they can dive right back into that pool, and they have to be very, very careful about where they do that. But to your point, if that's the number that you're looking at in the $5.5 million range, and I don't know, it may be tough to get a guy like who's played the way he has for that. But if you can, I mean, that's the pitch I think that you have to make is you can be here, you can make that money, and you can do really, really well. But I just don't think that they can risk locking guys up long term. They need to make sure they've got space to add the guys that they need and add the depth they need and create more depth in that lineup, because if they're able to get, and we've talked about this time and time again, if they're able to get a Lowry type element on that team, it completely, in my mind, changes the game there and instantaneously, I think, makes them a cup contender if you can add that and a goalie. Two big asks, for sure.
Let's dive into this. So, I mean, Sean, we talked about it before. I mean, at a time, it looked like maybe the Jets were starting to separate. What's your opinion on Sparky's commentary here that the Leafs are going to fade and that the Oilers could be first?
I mean, I think I like this, and I like that he brought up these three teams because I think it's interesting. So you and I talked about it in our pregame. The Oilers go in and are basically the challengers for first place in the league, and they go play the Leafs and get absolutely spanked and sent on their way, right? What I like about it is the response that they've had since. And I told you, I thought that the Leafs played so well against them, and then took a big exhale and patted themselves on the back and haven't figured out themselves out since. Now, this break, I think, comes at the absolute perfect time for them. I remember, 5 straight losses the Jets had last year before they went into that week-long break. And I remember it's a game in Columbus. They lose that 5th straight, and they're going into the break. And I asked Paul Maurice, is this break coming at a good time, or are your guys going to stew over how bad things had gone? He was like, oh, no. This is the perfect time for a break. And I see it as being the exact same thing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I expect them to come back out of that and come back hard. And I do think there's a little bit of the Jets have had a little bit of an exhale. I mean, what have they done since that series where they really, staked their claim as first place? Well, they've lost 2 of 3 games, and one of them they had to win in overtime. They've been close. I'm not saying that they've totally gone down, but we're at a stage now where if the Edmonton Oilers win tomorrow night, it's the Jets need to really pick it up to get back into pace with the Edmonton Oilers. Never mind trying to play for first against the Toronto Maple Leafs. The race is on. The idea of the Edmonton Oilers winning, I can get behind that only because in my preseason assessment of this division, I had the Oilers finishing first. So I love the way he thinks. That's great. Well, what do you think, Ken?
That is true. I mean, we can always be honest here. I've given you the gears when you've been wrong this week about Kyle Connor's potential removal from the power play.
Oh my goodness! I never said it was happening. I was floating the idea. But go for it. You're talking all night.
I will be burying myself here in our Sportsnet predictions pool. I had the Oilers as my potential biggest disappointment in the North. I thought that their defensive flaws would come back to haunt them, especially after the Clefbaum injury. I still don't feel overly comfortable in a playoff series about the Oilers' goaltending. I mean,
right.
Mike Smith did a great job with Calgary a couple of years ago, but goaltending was a major concern against the Chicago Blackhawks in that last year's play-in round. So to me, it's funny. The Oilers and the Leafs are very much in a similar vein, Sean. I mean, both of them have big challenges when it comes to showing that they can do it in the postseason. And I mean, you could even include the Jets in that as well. I mean, you could include the Jets since their run to the Western Conference Final. 2 early exits, 1 from the first round, 1 from the qualifying round. So this core group has something to prove. We know they've had one great run, and it was nearly a greater run. But they don't want a participation ribbon. They want to have some hardware going home with them. So I think this is a great test. I think the one thing I would counter in terms of the argument from Sparky is when you get smoked 13-1, you are going to have to show me that you can do it against Toronto if you're Edmonton, with all due respect. And until they do that, I think that the Leafs still deserve the credit they deserve because of where they are. And the other part of that is their ability to bounce back. I totally commend them for picking themselves off the mat because most people thought the Oilers were just going to go away. So this is still wide open. Let's not kid ourselves. This division is wide open. As Raymond says, the Habs are not out of it. We'll see how Calgary does against Toronto. I think that I'm with you. I think the break is the perfect elixir for the Leafs. I think they're going to come out of this break strong. However, I mean, it's not going to be easy for them because now you got a Daryl Sutter coach team that is coming off waxing at the hands of the Oilers, and they're going to be hungry. And now, how are they going to respond? I mean, this is a big challenge for them. And then the other part of that too, Sean. I mean, hey, we've talked about the Jets' ability to bounce back off the mat. It's been impressive. I think is it 8-0-1 now after a regulation loss.
Yeah.
But if here's another chance on Saturday night. If they're able to keep that streak alive, well, you tip your cap to them because of their ability to do so. But if they don't win that game, all of a sudden they're looking at 3 out of 4 losses, and their only win was in overtime after a third period. I mean, I wouldn't call it a complete meltdown, but it was certainly a blown lead where the other team basically took it to them. So we talked about every other team in the North has had a crisis of some sort.
Right.
The Jets were able to deal with some adversity when it came to the Laine injury, the Dubois injury, the quarantine. They've definitely had a challenge, but they have not had a full-on crisis. If you haven't lost consecutive games in regulation, you have not had a crisis yet. So,
no.
And this is the most taxing part of the schedule, and I know you brought it up today, both to players and to Paul Maurice. It's not an excuse, but this is the type of part of a schedule, the hard, not a soft part of the schedule, the hard part of the schedule, that if things fall off the rails, it happens quickly. So That's where that ability to regroup has served the Jets well, and we'll see if they can continue that on Saturday. Sorry, one quick one with Scheifele. What did you think when you saw him take that shot off the right ankle?
I mean, hey, the first thing I thought was look at the buy-in, right? Like I didn't think that line had their best effort tonight. I don't think most players didn't have their best effort. Although it's funny when Paul Maurice was talking about it not being a silky smooth game, Connor McDavid sure looked silky smooth out there. I mean, him at 70% is still probably close to being the best player in the league. But I mean, I appreciate the buy-in. I like the guy is reaching out, putting his leg in, and it's probably just reactionary, but totally that still says something about a player that is your reaction, that is your instinct, is to put your leg in a terrible spot to stop that. I mean, if you take a look at the rebound, and I know he was hurting on the bench, and I think we both know what it's like to take shots like that and how they can feel a little bit later, but he gets hit. His initial reaction is pain, but then his next reaction is to try and chase the puck down and chase an opportunity the other direction. The moment I saw that, I wasn't worried that he wasn't coming back. I don't know about you, but I know there was a lot of concern about it. But the look on his face, there's a great shot from the goalie side angle, like from the end of the ice, Oilers' end of the ice, of him stopping it, wincing in pain, and then his eyes go into that kind of Terminator, like, okay, now it's the next thing to do is go straight down the ice, and they don't hold on to the puck, and then he can kind of indulge in the pain a little bit more. But I think he'll be fine. He'll probably be a little bit sore, but I don't think it's anything to worry about.
The one thing for me, just the way he hobbled down the tunnel, that was the more, thing that caused the antenna to go up, I guess. I mean, he wasn't putting a lot of weight on it. It was probably more a bit of a stinger, but I guess you always have to be careful when the skate comes off. That's when those things can inflame. But
yeah,
Mark Scheifele did not seem very concerned about it with his 2-word answer. It's fine.
Yeah, we've got, wasn't that Scotty who asked that? Scotty's been on it here. Scott, I thought Scotty, there he is. Scotty, the only thing you've contributed to our show so far is LOL. Scott, come on, get it together. It's, you know what? That's a longer answer than you got, Scott, from Mark Scheifele when you asked him about his injury tonight. That was funny though. How's the leg? Leg's fine. He's moving on. Yeah.
Sorry, you wanted to talk about. I mean, we've been talking about ekholm a lot. Again, I think
it's going in that direction, and we're just gonna have to keep talking about it. And it's funny because people are talking about. I think some person here had said the cost is going to be too high, so walk away. Other people are saying pay whatever the cost is. I think you and I are both on the pay a big, fat, heavy price end of the spectrum when it comes to ekholm. Correct?
Yeah, I think that it's just. If you're going to go, I think the Jets showed they were willing to go all in when they went out and got Pierre-Luc Dubois. So if you're going to go all in, then
go all in. Yeah,
push the rest of the chips in. Again, it's easy for you and I, Sean, because it's not our chips. So
right,
and there's no consequences when our chips go to the middle of the table. But I definitely do think, and again, it's because of what we talked about on the pregame show. Because the Jets are in that window and they have some backfill in terms of their defensive prospects, I think that is what could allow them to go a little bit further than they might be comfortable in doing so. And this again brings us back to our original discussion in 2018 about Paul Stastny. I always have contended that the Jets were already offering more than they were comfortable with. You and I have had this debate a long time ago. Where you thought they should have gone even further. But I think the Jets had already extended beyond what they were willing to pay in terms of their offer. And Vegas, I think it was pretty close to even. But the separator was Vegas is a tax-free state. So that $6.5 million on that third year of the deal, which the Jets, I think at the time, were probably skeptical about, but were willing to give to secure the player. I don't think they could have gone to $7 million. Given their situation and who is coming out of entry-level contracts. But again, my point being, they were willing to push in the chips. And the other part too, in bringing back Stastny, a lot of people thought because Vegas had to move money that the Jets paid too high a price. Well, it's fine if you could have extracted more, but you don't risk losing the player because you hoped you could give a 5th-round draft pick instead of a 4th and Carl Dahlstrom. I mean, if you look at what Paul Stastny has provided for what the Jets gave up to get him, I mean, it was a no-brainer. Yes, he did cost, $6.5 million on the books, but he's been a very good player for the Jets. There's no doubt about it. But it's just back to our original point. The Jets have made moves that suggest they're going to go for it. And I think this is the kind of move that could help put them over the top.
Well, I was going to say that, if we're thinking that Kevin Cheveldayoff is not going to go all in, I think we're not paying attention, right? Because I think he did go
we're paying
all
attention.
in with he did go all in with Stastny. He did try and give him enough money to keep him around and was admittedly overextending himself to do so. So he was trying to go all in there. And then they go and they get Kevin Hayes the next year. And that was another example of them being all in. What was the big issue that they had for years and years and years was that second line center. They wanted to fix that problem. So they threw significant resources at that for a couple of years. So I would fully expect them to throw significant resources at this year. And we talked about it in our pregame show. The choice and it, I think last year was the second choice, the idea of let's go find guys that we think can fill a need and fit into our system. And then there's guys you can go get who are just going to fit into whatever system you have because they're that good, right? And I see, people, the names that come up most often are Savard and Ekholm, right? I see Savard as being I don't think he's a home run. I don't know if he's a ground rule double, but I don't quite know if I think he's a triple. I think it's one of those ones where you hit it. It could have been a triple, but you stop at second because you're not quite sure if we're using baseball analogies. But
don't make the first or third out at third.
Yeah.
So you take the double and you expect the cleanup guy to cash you in.
That's good.
That's good base running. I appreciate the base running.
I appreciate the support. Thank you, Ken. But the idea of Savard, I think, is he's that level of player. But it doesn't necessarily. Maybe it'll work, and the Jets, I think, do a real good job of recognizing the guys who fit into their system and the guys. And we go back again to Forbert and what he's been this year. I think he's been everything that they expected he could be, and at that price, it's a really great fit. But again, I think they've got the goaltending. I think they've got the depth up front. I think they need a big name on that back end, a horse that they can really, really lean on. And Mattias Ekholm is that horse. And so we've said this before. The price, to me, one, it can be high because there's going to be a lot of teams interested in it. But two, these are teams in competing divisions. And I said it like this. If you are collecting hockey cards and you've got that one last hockey card that you need, and I've got it, and I know you need it to complete your set, the price just went up 20%. And that's how it's going to go. And people need to recognize that. People who are trying to say, let's give them a first and a late third and a prospect that's never going to show up. That's not going to get it done. And you said it perfectly in our pregame. The Predators are trying to replace Ekholm with the next Ekholm. That's right. The goal of what they're trying to do here. And because this year is strange and that we can't get out with young prospects, haven't been able to show off the way that they would typically show off, there's a little more, I think, of a gamble in the first round this year. So if that first round pick is one of the things that's going there, it's going to be, oh my goodness, Razor's just derailing. We've just got nothing but derailers all night here tonight.
Sorry, we've talked about this before. It's the Jake Muzzin deal. That's what it's going to take. A first rounder and probably a good prospect and then a secondary prospect. That is what we expect the deal to be. The Jets are probably comfortable moving that 21 or 22 first rounder. Again, we know Sami Niku has been thrown out there. He would be the sweetener. He won't be the centerpiece. He would be the third piece that would be potentially be involved. Could it be Jansen Harkins? Maybe. Could it be? Because the Predators have goalie prospects. I think at one point I wrote maybe Mikhail Burden might interest them. Not necessarily because they got Askarov, I think, at 11 this year. So maybe he doesn't make sense.
You'd said that before. I think Askarov is that has it settled. They don't need Burden.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair there. But I think there would be some players that have some intrigue. Obviously, Dylan Samberg is the guy that's going to get attention. That's probably where the debate is, both internally and with David Poile. That's probably what he's holding out for. Could it happen? We'll see. I don't think the Jets want to go there, but I think it's something that they're going to have to talk about.
Ken, do you think they're going to get Ekholm? Let's just say it. Do you think they're going to get him?
I do.
I do too. I do too.
It just makes it. This is why it makes too much sense not to happen. And again, we know it's not yours and it's not our money. It's not our prospect pool. But I just think the Jets have taken these steps so far to build to this point that they want to get over the hump, and getting a player of that magnitude is what gets a team and an organization over the hump. I don't think it's a disaster if the Jets are unable to complete the deal, and there are maybe other general managers. We expect Marc Bergevin to be quite active.
Yeah.
Based on our
although he poured a little water on that too, eh?
He did, but that's all, publicly. What guys say publicly, take it for what it's worth. No
Unless you're Kyle Dubas.
No one's going to show all your cards. And again, like I said, I thought that Dubas's presser was fantastic, but my antenna immediately was like, this is a bait and switch here. Totally think that. Yeah, I said the Leafs are looking for a forward, but now I went out and got Matthias Ekholm. Everybody thought I was going for a top forward. So
the deep fake, if he pulls that off, you'll have like QAnon people referencing that deep fake 3 years afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of I don't see Ekholm and Savard both being in to the Jets. No chance. But that's creative thinking. No, there's no doubt about that. But I do think they're going to secure the deal. You do as well?
I mean, I do, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen because of what you're talking about. Like, I always think back to the Derek Brassard and the Jets' efforts to get him, and Vegas, getting in there and basically getting him out of that division and sending him away. And I guess they get Reeves, and it ends up paying off for them. But
sure.
But what they did there, I mean, I have to think that. We've talked about this, the opportunity that exists in the North this year and the teams that you have to go to. It's not a question mark. Paul Maurice said it earlier, or maybe it was Kevin Cheveldayoff. One of those two had talked about, you go out and you get a player because you got to play this team, and then 9 times out of 10 you don't end up playing that team. Well, we're pretty certain that the Jets are going to be playing at least, if not one of, if not two of the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Edmonton Oilers or the Montreal Canadiens in the playoffs this year. It's a pretty good chance that's going to happen. So you know who you're going through. So you know how you have to build your team. If you think that there's a weakness that's being exploited by a specific team, you know how to go address that. So I just think this year it makes it more interesting in that regard because people know where they have to go. So I think there's going to be that attempt to try and steal players out from one another. But like you said, it makes too much sense. He's exactly what they need. They're familiar with Matthias Ekholm. They've gone to battle with Matthias Ekholm. They respect the heck out of the guy, as they should. He's everything they need. And like I said, I think we've seen enough examples of Kevin Cheveldayoff believing in this group, believing in the window, and going all in the past, that there's no reason for him not to do it this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an interesting one for me. We talked about Declan Chisholm quite extensively in the pregame show as well.
Yes.
I think, it would be a possibility in terms of there's 2 first-rounders and then a late bloomer, if you will. I do think I did mention Vesalainen as one of the pieces that was possible in my original column on Ekholm as well. But, again, I think that Nashville is pushing probably for Dylan Samberg. If the Jets can make that deal for Chisholm instead, I think that would be their preference, but they're still giving up a lot there. There's 2 first-round picks. The other way, I don't know if they'd go as far as 2 first-rounders and then a second-rounder in Samberg. I think that is probably too steep a price. If they could get the deal to be Vesalainen, Chisholm, and a first-rounder, I think that's probably a price tag the Jets would be more willing to pay.
I think they'd pay that in a heartbeat, yeah. I don't think that deal gets it done. I don't think that's
totally fair, right? That the only thing that is a benefit is that now you're getting, if you're David Poile, you're getting 3 assets, including essentially 2 first-round picks. You don't have to protect any of them in expansion. You might look at it that way, but I think they would much rather have a first-rounder and Samberg in that deal for Ekholm. But again, let's see how this plays out. We expect things to heat up here in the next little bit, but that's the beauty. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it sure is fun to speculate.
Hey, videos of Reddit. You should tell us which senior A team you are. I'm interested in this. Ken, where do you want to go from here?
I said that, and there's a lot of senior hockey players in this chat, so
Yeah, I love it.
there's a lot
Love
of
it.
people checking in, and we appreciate it. So it wouldn't take long to get a scouting report out here from some of our other friends from the hockey ranks. So
Exactly. Well, again, and Butter, who did some high school coaching and was control of a couple teams that were taking a run at the oh my God, how come I'm drawing a blank on this? The senior A championship. So yeah, the Allen Cup. He was putting teams together for that. Butter knows that kind of stuff. He is entirely against the Jets moving Sandberg in that deal. But I honestly think that that's the ask. I think the ask is a first in Sandberg, and based on what Ekholm is, and again the familiarity they have with him, the fact that he's on such a good contract, and the fact that you'd get him for this season, for this run, and for next year, I just think makes him so valuable. And so I understand why that's the ask. And I don't know. I think that is potentially what it's going to take to get him. I could see that deal being made.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sorry, Michael. I don't believe that Dustin Byfuglien has. We were talking about wrestling and wrestling music. I don't hear Dustin Byfuglien's music playing in the background. I think that he's enjoying retirement, enjoying spending time with his family. Being outdoors, hunting, fishing, those sorts of things, and I don't think we're going to see a remarkable comeback from a player who had a great career.
What would it take for a guy like that? Never mind the fact that he's not playing this year. He didn't play last year. He comes off an injury, but the fact that he missed basically half the season before that and a good chunk of the season before that. I mean, are we at the stage where you can, whether he wants to play or not, put to rest the idea of Dustin Byfuglien returning to the NHL?
Well, I think physically he could always decide to come back just based on the, force of nature that he is physically. But I think that nothing has changed from the time that he walked into Kevin Cheveldayoff's office and told him that he no longer had the desire to play hockey. I think that his ability to there were a lot of miles on Dustin Byfuglien. He played some hard miles based on how he played, and I just don't think that he wants to play anymore. I think he left it all on the ice, and I think he's happy in retirement. So,
all right, Ken, we should probably close this out. It's closing in on an hour here. I mean, we love to keep going with everybody, but you got work to do. You got to call it. He's got to call him. He's got to write yet. So, is there anything you want to fall on or leave this on?
There were a couple quick questions about Heinola. I think it was Paul Maurice was a little bit vague when I did ask about Heinola prior to the game today. I mean, not vague in terms of he said he's here on the taxi squad, but there's no plan for him. He would be available just like all the rest of the players on the taxi squad. But now we do know that Heinola is skating with the Jets, and because there is a spot available on the roster after the departure of Anton Forsberg, if the Jets wanted to plug him in, they could do so. So, I mean, I do think we're going to see him in the lineup at some point here. I don't know that it would be. I don't think it would be Saturday, because I don't anticipate the Jets will be on the ice tomorrow. I mean, maybe the taxi squad will be, but the team is going to be off on Friday after playing back-to-back and traveling. But for the folks wondering if it's a concern that he's up with the Jets, well, the Moose don't play till the 25th. So yeah. This is just time to be around the NHL team, get comfortable. If they need him or want to use him, I think he's available. And again, we talked about this before. I think that it was important for him to be down with the Manitoba Moose, playing 20 to 25 minutes a game, being used in all situations. But I do think there could be an opportunity to see him and see what his progression's been like since he checked into that game against Ottawa earlier in the year.
I want to just touch on this right before we go. This comment about Russo at The Athletic. He broke this story, and it was phenomenal. A former colleague of yours at The Athletic, and how he'd had a source who told him that Guerin and Byfuglien and Byfuglien's agent had met at a bar, and basically just breakfast bar.
Sure.
I don't want to make them sound like they got a problem or anything like that. But went out and kind of talked, and they never really talked hockey. But it was interesting because Russo had Byfuglien's agent on his podcast, Ben Hankinson, and talked with him about the scenario. And Hankinson was very vocal in that he was very much trying to convince him to come back. Like he was on side with getting Dustin Byfuglien back into the league, and it sounded like Bill Guerin would have interest. And why would you not? You know, the potential for what Dustin Byfuglien could do for you. Like you'd said, he's such a force of nature. Yeah, you know, I say that maybe he couldn't come back in, but who foresaw as the league got smaller and faster and speedier, Dustin Byfuglien 10 years ago being one of the guys who excelled in that. I would have thought he would have been one of the first guys out of the league. Instead, he became the guy that feasted on that league and could probably do it again. But I just think that is very telling. If your agent is, you know, setting up meetings, trying to lure you back into the game and it's not happening, it probably tells you a lot about the mindset. And I'll say this about our insider, Elliot Friedman, the entire time that was happening and we kept hearing rumblings about Dustin Byfuglien coming back, he told me right from the beginning, and credit where it's due, Dustin Byfuglien is not coming back. He had a deep source on it. He said he was right beside the heart of that conversation. And he said Dustin Byfuglien is not coming back. And he ended up being right. So congrats to Elliot Friedman, who we had on our podcast, our long form podcast last week on episode 3. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. is episode 4. We've got Big Louis DeBrusque on, and we've got Aaron Portzline to come talk Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm guessing there's still a lot of you out there who can't get enough of talking about Patrick Laine, and there's probably a lot of Schadenfreude out there who want to kind of rip on the fact that he's having some struggles there. Tune in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We're going to do that.
We'll ask him about David Savard as well.
Well, yeah, fans are there. You go. Everyone's wondering. It's perfect synergy. You need more Kenny and Rennie in your life. So tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., we're going to give you more Kenny and Rennie in your life. And then we're going to give you more pregame on Instagram before Saturday. And we're going to do this again after the game on Saturday, which is going to be really late. If we're wrapping up now at 12:15, Ken, we're probably going to shut that one down, especially if it's a big win at probably like 1:45 in the morning. And I'm here for it. I'm loving it. Love spending time with everybody. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening, and we will check you out tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. because you all have tons of time to do that. So we appreciate you tuning in. See you tomorrow morning.